Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and apologies that we are starting late today. But welcome to the panel for Open Access Week 2025, hosted by CDU and including researchers from the Libraries and Archives of the Northern Territory. Our topic today is Unlocking Knowledge, Open Access Communities and Research in the Northern Territory. And joining us today on the panel are Dr. Kat Kutay from CDU, Don Christopherson from LANT, Jackie Gould from CDU, and Dr. Charlie Ward from LANT. And I'd like to hand over to our University Librarian, Bernadette Royal, to start us off today. Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks, Crystal. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Larrakia people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community. I also extend this respect to First Nations people across Australia and to any Indigenous people joining us today. So as part of International Open Access Week 2025, we're here to reflect on this year's theme, Who Owns Our Knowledge? This theme invites us to consider how knowledge is created, shared and controlled, and to think critically about whose voices are recognised and valued in research and scholarship. Open access refers to the free, immediate, and in most cases, unrestricted online availability of research outputs. It allows anyone to read, use, and build upon scholarly work, supporting the sharing of knowledge for the benefit of communities, researchers, and society at large. Today's panel will explore open access and knowledge in the context of the Northern Territory, including the ethical sharing of Indigenous and community knowledge and emerging challenges such as the use of AI in research. With that, I'd like to warmly introduce our panelists who have kindly agreed to share their perspectives and insights on this important topic of knowledge ownership, community-led research, and open access. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Kat Kutay, who's a Kat person. Kat is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Science and Technology at Charles Darwin University. Kat works with Aboriginal communities for online language learning, story sharing and data analysis as a way for Aboriginal culture and knowledge to be acknowledged and integrated into Australian engineering approaches. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Charlie Ward, who is the Library and Archives NT, history curator and a non-Indigenous historian and writer. Charlie has collaborated in recording and co-presenting First Nation stories and histories in film, audio, live performance, oral histories, and text in the Northern Territory over 2 decades. Also joining us is Don Christopherson from Libraries and Archives NT, who's a First Nations Education and Engagement Coordinator. Don is a Northern Territory historical and cultural researcher whose passion is the researching and telling of the history of the Northern Territory, both from a First Nations and mainstream perspective of history. So welcome, Don. And we also have Jackie Gould, who is a Senior Research Fellow at the Northern Institute at Charles Darwin University, who works with Indigenous cultural authorities on projects which celebrate sea country and the knowledge, relationships and law that it holds. Her work seeks to recognise the agency and authority of sea country and those who care for it, and the important contributions Indigenous sea country managers make to the protection of Australia's marine estate. So thank you so much for our panellists joining us today. And I'd now like to hand over to Veronica, who's our moderator this afternoon.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bernadette, and a very warm welcome to our panel members. The first question for the panel is, given the Western system's understanding of open access as defined earlier by Bernie, do you believe these can be applied to Indigenous knowledges, and how? And maybe Kat can start the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because we like to see that Indigenous knowledges have a lot to contribute to understanding like why there should be open access or not, or what restrictions should be on it. And I'd certainly say there needs to be restrictions. When we share knowledge, we share it with people who are qualified to understand it, not misinterpret it. And the person who shares it must be qualified to speak it because they might misinterpret it and bring in gossip. So when you've got an oral knowledge system, you've got to be very careful how you share that. You don't pollute it with other people's ideas that aren't related to the country. And so we've got protocols of knowledge sharing, and they're very useful protocols, and they're mirrored in the written form where the person who tells a story must be expert in that area, such as we have authorities who write to journals or those who are expert in that area. So there's a lot of similarity, and I think, but still, open access has a lot of advantage if we can share our knowledge more in a well-supported way.
Thank you. That was fantastic. And perhaps we hand over to Don and Charlie from Lent next.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I think it's a great question. Do you want to kick us off, Don?
One of the things that I'm currently a part of is working with a group called Education Mob, and what Education Mob are doing is collating images from the Northern Territory and from ex-educators and who took photographs all over the Territory while they were doing teaching in remote communities. And so we're collating all those images and putting them online so people can have access to them. So they're images from the 1950s, 60s, right through to the last 10 years. And also we're collecting stolen generation images, and not only from the state and territory institutions, but also church organisations. And it's a hard task, but yeah, we are collecting those images, and finally those institutions are handing over those images to an organisation like us, so we can disseminate those images back to the families and community groups who want those images. Otherwise, they'll sit there forever, and the children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren won't have those images of their family, and that's what people are looking for today. And but some institutions are still holding on and not releasing images, but that's the fight we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and another point is I think there's an interesting space for the application of creative technologies in areas where that open access is appropriate, and the custodians of that knowledge have made that decision that it's not to be restricted, and where the technology can actually be useful for cultural preservation. So, yeah, an example would be the Indigimojis that was about 5 or 6 years ago, I think, that team down in Aranda country developed a series of emojis that, reference useful everyday kind of cultural reference points in Aranda life, and it's a language preservation tool that's very accessible for people. So it's an interesting space.
Thank you. And Jackie?
Hi, everyone. I think the others have made some really pertinent points. What can I add? I think I like Kat's comments about knowledge being owned and held and having obligations around it. So as a non-Indigenous researcher, when I am the recipient of knowledge from my Indigenous peers who have typically engaged me to support them to document knowledge for a particular purpose, it does come with certain responsibilities and obligations, and certainly not sharing that information unless given permission to, or unless it's within the ways that I have been instructed is one of those obligations. So open access in that sense of open data sets is problematic and is complex. So that said, you know, I guess for me, when I work with people, they retain all of the IP and all of the sovereignty over that data. So the data usually goes back to them, and then I see them using it in ways that is really fascinating. So there's usually parts of that knowledge that they do want to be public facing, and they make the decisions about what that is.
Yeah.
And in my experience, I guess, like sometimes I see people, for example, sharing on Facebook maps that we've made, which I would never share on my Facebook, but if people want to share that with their families and friends in that format, that's fantastic. And it shows that they're wanting to celebrate and make visible that knowledge across their community of peers. So yeah, I guess that's my initial thoughts on that question.
And especially as we're often dealing with people who've been dispersed. So as Don's talking about those stolen generation images, a lot of people won't be necessarily on the country where they were recorded, but they, because of the internet, we can access them if, you know, in some way that's done properly.
All right. All right, we got a good range of answers there. Thank you. I should just mention that any questions you have for the panel, you can put it in the chat, and after we get through as many questions as we can, then we can take those up. Second question for the panel is, how can Indigenous communities retain sovereignty over their knowledge in digital and open spaces? And I'll leave it open to you all to decide who would like to speak. Thank you.
I've warned I'd always keep jumping in, so you might really need to restrain me. But yeah, we've got a lot of IT systems, quite a lot flourishing now. I've set up a YouTube unlisted list of ones I'm trying to gather videos around, say these are what's available for people to use. And their idea is that they're often a template that a community can take and make their own space on a server. And this is their website, this is their repository, and have stories. And there's various access privileges they can set up so that only certain people can access certain stories until, as Jackie was saying, the community then might decide, okay, we strengthen our stories. We've all heard the different parts of that storyline. We're now really strong and that's what we want to tell, and that can go public. So I think it's a really useful tool if it's a good tool that they can use. Yeah.
I could just throw in that, I mean, agreeing with what Kat's just said, but also, you know, to be realistic, like there's the risk that you know, programs and platforms with all the best will in the world can become prey to defunding or you know, data breaches, etc., etc. And just saying that, you know, just aware of some of the platforms that have been set up in the Northern Territory with the best intentions and community of shared resources, photographs and cultural material on them. And 5 years down the track, they're not accessible because the government has you know, reallocated funding or it's no longer viable, etc. So I think it's just good to be, for me anyway, to be honest with myself about that, you know, when I'm proposing like a new platform, etc.
Part of the problem will be trying to get some ongoing commitment federally or state-wide or at university even to support where does this knowledge go when it's that site's not funded? Where can we put it that it's still accessible to the community? Yeah, it's important.
I mean, probably relevant to this is the Living Archive of Aboriginal Languages. That was a ARC project, wasn't it? With CDU participation, and I mean, yeah, to the credit of the researchers, that was I think all transferred over to LANT when CDU was no longer hosting it.
Yeah, so things can be done. You can find another space for it.
Yeah.
Jackie, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think these guys have much more experience at this end of the research journey. My end is often at the sort of at the collection end and making some few often crude outputs for people by some of the standards that Kat talks about, for example, much more sophisticated. So yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to hear what the opportunities are for people and communities to take things like the work I've done and how they can then take courage and ownership of it in some of these institutional spaces is exciting and of interest to me.
We're trying to look at things called personal online data storage, where the person or the community will store the material in a space, and then application can get access to it. So it'd be up to that community to say, yes, this application can access it. And that might be a bit more flexible in the sense as applications will come and go, but that data storage will remain. And then that might be a bit more flexible.
All right, I'm going to move straight into the next question so we can cover a wide range of sort of aspects of this topic. How can digital technologies be used to amplify Indigenous and community voices rather than extract or appropriate them? We've been talking a little bit about that already. Hand over to
Don.
Yeah, I'd actually, what comes to mind for me is the visitor centre being revamped at Kakadu. Don, as a way that technology can be used to present people's knowledge and information that they want shared.
Yeah, there's someone working on that already, and but yeah, there's so much better technology around than was. I think it's about 20 years ago when they put that initial material together, and today we've got so much better technology to be able to show imagery and sounds and voices and stories than we had 20 years ago. Yeah.
So I think and Don and I both work as curators. So for me personally, when I say digital technologies, I don't necessarily think of online technologies. So we in our permanent exhibition here, we've included many First Nations stories from different families and communities and Indigenous NGOs, and telling the stories that those people and groups want to be told, in a way amplifying the voices and reaching a bigger audience, but also in a way that's safe, as in not shareable or not available to people who might want to appropriate it.
Yeah, and that's the same for oral histories. We're recording people's information about their lives, and a lot of people are very cautious about giving that material and where's it going to be accessed, and so those fears are relayed once you show them that you can have that information to be open or restricted just to your family, or you need permissions for people to look at that material. So yeah, most people are happy with that, and but yeah, oral histories are a big thing for us, and we've got them going right back to the 1970s, and every year we're collecting more.
And people here would appreciate it's just changed the whole environment with the internet. So when historically people agreed to have their interview open access, that what they were thinking of was that if somebody wanted to listen to it, they could lodge a request, and then that person would come into the archive office, and they'd be given a tape recorder to listen to the recording. But now, as managers of these collections, the Library and Archives NT's got to grapple with wanting collections to be accessible, but not wanting to disrespect the intentions of the owners of that material. So it's an interesting space that I think libraries all around the world are grappling with.
And yeah, that idea of you've got repository, got all this information, and then seeing that as an online data storage and how you display it. Yindamandi in Roban have set up a beautiful knowledge center where they've got this genealogical map. And so you can go in and click on your family and see the family line of back to as far as it goes, and then down to everyone below, later in ancestry. And people just love going in there to see all the different members of their family. And then there's other ones which are, you can go and click on parts of the country and hear stories of country. So as you say, it's not always on the internet, but that provides another way of looking at this data, which links it in. So you start to see, oh, this is on this place of country, and you see the country around you, and you see other things that come in, like they put a bit of animated totems in there to make it a bit more informative and a bit more alive. So there's ways we can make the voice, like not only just community voice, but also other people, local people can put their images on to enhance it a bit more, make the knowledge more thorough. Yeah.
Yes.
Jackie, do you have?
Oh, I was just going to say that something I've noticed over the sort of 20 years or so of my career is that there's a much stronger appetite at the community end. People are, back in the day, it was time, you would record a story with people, but as Don and Charlie were saying, the mediums through which it would be stored and shared are so different to today. And I do a lot of work with ranger groups, and all of them are being really innovative in terms of they now are sitting on their own repositories of all of this knowledge that they've collected under the appropriate protocols and instructions from elders and stories from elders and photographs, and all of them thinking through these complexities about how do we store them and how do we ensure that we ourselves can maintain and record the right protocols that were, given around that knowledge at the time it was recorded, noting that, in 10 years' time, it'll be a different cohort of staff at the ranger team who weren't present at the interview. And it's really fascinating watching people explore different mediums for both storing the information but also sharing the information. One of the projects that I lead has recently, the team members doing the on-ground work created a 3D map. And it's really interesting to see what kind of, and so that's now based at the school, and the school can add or remove material as instructed by people. And watching people explore these new mediums is really exciting, and watching how they seek to use them in creative ways that respond to their needs to look after and share those stories and knowledge is quite exciting.
And it is frustrating that a lot of stuff, particularly in language work, it's bespoke mobile apps or something, and going, this app could be used by any community, just change the imaging and the particular, like upload the data from that community. But a whole lot of the functionality, everything can be shared. Same in these digital interfaces to repositories. A lot of it can be shared across, and let's try and let the money become much more focused into, okay, this is the sort of thing we want, and then make it into tools for each group that suits what they want to do with their knowledge. A lot more of that would be helpful.
Some really interesting ideas on how you can use the digital technology to your advantage to amplify these voices. That's great. Next question, moving on, conscious of the time. How can communities reclaim and access archival materials, especially those tied to land, culture, or identity? Over to you all.
I would say maybe as a group to be formatting what they want to do with it and setting up as Jackie was saying, that they were always setting up their own repositories, their own systems, to get the confidence to say, okay, we're as a group, we want this sort of material, and then approach those who've got some storage for that data. But yeah, it's a long process.
I'm doing some work with the Larrakia Cultural Centre, and talking to the curators there, and I was gobsmacked that institutions are charging them for their own images, and you would think they'd be falling over themselves to give the images back, but no, she was telling me, no, they're charging for these images. Yeah, just unbelievable. And these are big name institutions too. Yeah, but
That's sort of policy change.
they'll spruik about ethics and all that, and how you use these images, and then they'll charge those communities who are trying to get them back. They'll be charging them for them, and I'm pretty sure they didn't pay for them, and they don't have the cultural knowledge for a lot of those images also. But yeah, they're charging for them. So yeah, unbelievable.
A lot of the pushback is, I think, over that sort of data sharing is, oh, well, is it safe? Is it culturally appropriate to whatever? Well, let the community group decide. You know, it's time that it's understood that, yes, there's complex protocols, and the people who own that material or identify with that material do know the protocols. They know how to handle it. So have some respect. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the issue. And the other issue is that, yeah, they've been asked to get permission for their own.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had that for Yugambeh language, the same.
Own images, you know, who they're going to go round and round in circles.
Yeah.
It's a tricky space, I guess. I mean, from our perspective, I guess, representing land, I mean, we obviously want the rightful custodians of the materials that we have to, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. Ideally, we would have people approaching us all the time, asking, what materials do we hold, and then entering into dialogue so that we can provide access of, how they stipulate it, and ideally we kind of become a keeping place for those materials on behalf of the community. But yeah, by the same token, it's with big collections, it's sort of an impossible task for us to be proactively approaching everybody about everything that we hold, and so what we can do is work our way through the collections systematically. And one of our colleagues, it's the First Nations Collections and Cultural Coordinator, and that's their brief. And so, yeah, it's a very slow but ongoing process. And the outcome of it is that slowly, bit by bit, we're repatriating and familiarising people with cultural materials that in many cases they're not even aware that we might have them. They were taken or obtained or donated so long ago. So yeah, it's rewarding work.
Yeah, that's right. Not the community wouldn't always know who to approach. So in a sense, the institutions have to approach the community, which might make them a little less hesitant. This hesitancy of sharing knowledge is very frustrating, because if you don't understand the protocols, doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you go out and find out what the protocols are and who owns and who should have access. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackie, anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I think they've done a fantastic job. Yeah, I guess there's so many historical issues about the way in which information has been collected and the purposes for which it was collected, and then the institutions that it now is locked up in. And it's a big issue to address that and make sure that material is available to the people who are now the rightful intellectual property holders, I suppose, for the knowledge of their forebears. So it was just reflecting on how much it is a time of change where people are better able these days to store and record and share or not their own knowledge in their own ways for their own purposes, yet at the same time, yeah, that historical legacy is very much with us all still.
All right, thank you. Crystal, would you like me to use the prompt question or go on to the next one? You want that? Okay. Well, so the next, this is related to this question. What responsibilities do institutions have when holding sensitive or commercial in confidence materials?
Was work done in Rambula about a possible benefit from spinifex resin and nanofibers from spinifex, and the effort to get the university, one of the university researchers involved, decided to take the IP of it. Took about 10 years for the IP to go back to the community. So there is this very problematic issue of research going back to the community, the benefits, the IP, and even the finance from it going back to community. So if an institution has done that research with community, I feel that, as CDU, we're responsible to ensure that the community is part of that research, is part of the benefits from that research at all times.
And perspectives from land regarding institutional responsibilities?
Yeah, well, I guess as I was saying before, an organisation like Land has a huge amount of materials which have been obtained, under varying circumstances, I guess, and the question comes up of, what does free, prior, and informed consent mean, and what does that look like? And over time, it obviously varies, and hopefully it has a lot more meaning nowadays. But I'm just thinking of things where we'll become aware of stuff in our collections that we can be pretty confident nowadays. People wouldn't be willingly sort of sharing that with whoever it might be. Even situations where, like a television production, say in the early 1960s, and it's been filmed on country with the participation and cooperation of a big number of people. But the context is that television didn't exist in the Northern Territory at that time. So you've got to wonder, like, what were people understanding by, how was this film product going to be distributed or shared or whatever. So I guess, the responsibility for us is to try to err on the side of caution, and when there's anything that we see that is objectionable, we'll be removing things from public display, and if it's not known where the materials have come from, then I think Don is very clearly of the view that there's not much point in having them at all. But if we can identify, like, what language group or community or family or individual we're talking about, then we can hold those materials until we can have dialogue and get guidance from the relevant custodians about what they want to do with the material.
And at times we get collections, and there may be one or two images within those collections that are sensitive today, but may not have been sensitive back in the 90s, And so we look at that. We've got to go back and look at our collection all the time and start taking out images that we see as not being appropriate for the public. And so it's an ongoing process.
But at least they're still available for the community when they want to see them. Yeah.
that's the positive, I guess. I mean, of what places like land do. I mean, there's actually, it's our legal requirement to preserve what's in our holdings, and so, you know, hypothetically that goes on until we can have the proper discussions with people.
Thank you. Jackie?
No, I don't have too much to add. Those guys have done a great job.
All right, maybe we'll move to the next question then. I'll wait for it to come up. What does open access look like when literacy, language, and digital infrastructure vary widely across communities? Maybe Jackie, you want to go first for a change?
Yeah, okay, sure. I don't know. I think I'm already, you know, showing my age. A lot of the young crew that I work with out bush are far more technologically literate already than I am. But perhaps not in a formal written English sense. But yeah, I don't know. I guess again, it's sort of me getting out of my zone of experience and expertise, because a lot of, you know, I haven't had the chance to play yet with a lot of different mediums to see what different groups are wanting and interested in, and where they're dexterous versus a bit more clunky at using different forms of data sharing technology. But they are doing it. So yeah, I mean, maybe Kat has a bit of experience more with that space.
I was thinking with IT students, I give them projects for Aboriginal community groups, and they go, "Oh, well, the elders won't be very experienced in social media." I go, "No, you got it back to front." So yeah, like they will be. So mobile apps. So I go, "No, they'll be fine on those." But when we've got these repository systems, they are invariably got really clunky interfaces, and that's why I've been trying to look for ones that are a bit more user friendly and a bit more social media focused and chatty, than not so formal, so that people feel confident that they understand where they're putting their data and how it links to other data, and they can see it very visibly. So yeah, Don.
Look.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that with changes with technology, and we're also getting cultural change also, and what wouldn't have been acceptable 20 years ago is acceptable today, and with images of deceased family being put on and distributed on telephones, you know, and but people do that today, and everyone says that's fine, you know, because people want the images of their family. But yeah, there's a lot of cultural change happening with this new digital technology, and that's just the way. As long as family and the communities are happy with how people are doing it, you know, it's fine, because they're recording a lot of information on their phones and distributing it now. Yeah.
And it can be deliberate, like Yolu, the film that came out recently about the Witnoon and a colleague of mine who passed away from asbestosis, or what it's disease, and so they filmed it as him dying and the country dying, and the fact that that's not being, so he deliberately had himself filmed in the dying state right through to the funeral, because that was a really strong point to make. And yeah, that's, yeah, you say social mores are changing a lot about how to handle knowledge.
I guess so. What comes up for me is just pretty basic observation about the vulnerability of physical IT in remote communities, and you know, air conditioners that work and then don't work, and you know, dust and floods and all the rest of it. And even though it comes with its own risks, maybe there's something to be said for cloud-based storage that people can access through their mobile phones, but not my area of expertise at all. So
but certainly if we can have it, and also that problem of changing formats. So but something might be visible software now, and then we no longer look at FileMaker Pro applications, or we can't see them. So to be, the more cloud-based it is, it's more opportunity for people to come in and say, okay, I can convert that to something that's now visible to general mobile apps and stuff. Yeah, it's hard keeping it up to date in format as well as access.
Okay.
And
Go on. Yes, please go on, Don.
I was just, I mean, what Kat's saying just makes me think of, you know, where does the responsibility lie in this sort of situation? And it sort of seems like it's spread over many different parties, from the app developers, wherever they might be, to the people who are providing that platform, which again, I guess going back to what I was saying earlier, like institutions and certainly in the commercial space, these entities can kind of come and go over time, and ultimately over a long period, it doesn't lead to good outcomes for the knowledge holders.
But the more we get First Nations in IT doing the IT development, the more they will retain that consistency and be able to. So that's what I'm trying to look at, organisations that are doing it with an IT focus. I mean, sorry, with First Nations people doing the IT focus, so that they will understand that need for longevity and respect. Yeah.
That's a good, important point, Kat. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. And following on from that question, which seems to have got quite a lot of discussion, how can open knowledge systems adapt to local contexts, particularly in the Northern Territory, and avoid reinforcing inequities?
More IT education out remote, more engagement in developing own software, and more confident. When you see knowledge up there, that's why I started working language. If you see language online and the tools to support the language learning, you think, well, A, my language is being valued, and B, it's worth going in doing that work to develop this tools that do that. So just more of it. Yeah.
Anyone else want to share what they think about that?
I think Jackie does more work in local contexts than us, probably.
Yeah, but I'm a terribly inept with any of these exciting IT innovations. But I guess if I was trying to bring myself into the 21st century, I would be sticking to the fundamental principles that I've learned through pen and paper, which is people are empowered when they retain the authority and control over their own knowledge. So collaborations where expertise might be missing in a particular local context, and obviously that varies from place to place. Sometimes you have these incredibly capable and competent people in all sorts of stuff, and other times there's a gap there. So whereas someone who's not a member of that local community can support by bridging those capacity gaps, so that people can use that expertise to control a project and where it goes and what it does, where it starts, where it finishes, what it achieves, and for what purpose. You can see people do some really amazing things, and it's really fun to work under the instruction and guidance of Indigenous knowledge experts in my experience. And I can only just encourage everyone to stick to those key principles. It's as academics in particular they really struggle with this concept of working with material that they don't then own. But if you can move beyond that, that's when I think those inequities can be addressed.
I think Don made that good point about how these systems will go out of date. They'll not be supported anymore. And so probably what's most important is to start with really basic systems like you use, Jackie, like an online OneDrive or something like that, but it's got limited access. And then from there, develop the interfaces so that interface can change. And that's
Yeah.
what we're trying to look at with this idea of pods, that the data's stored, and then after that you can develop the interface that will show it in appropriate manner for that
Yeah.
time and that community and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, so when I work with people to we go out and we map places and we map some of the knowledge that's associated with that place. Yeah, that it's useful to have that knowledge sitting available somewhere that is in a reasonably hardy cyber or other location, so that as those interfaces change, people can continue to re-access that information and use it in those new ways, which will continue to change over time. And which Donald Charlie, I think, commented about the changing context of what people want to share and want to not share, and for what purposes. That will continue to evolve. And yeah, as long as that information, those decisions are being made by people themselves, that's, I guess, the key aspect.
And you made that point for academics that I always see, like, you see a project academic going out to remote community to collect information, and probably across a few communities, and they're working with a knowledge holder who's got deep knowledge of that area, but they're taking the pattern across those different communities, so it's quite different focus. So I could see that, yeah, it's you don't own the knowledge, but you own the pattern that you've developed from across those communities. So there's quite a different knowledge system that you're dealing with, and they both have value. So yeah.
And I guess another sort of, this is moving outside of this sort of interface of how knowledge is shared. But I guess in those contexts, when you are a researcher coming in to look at a thematic kind of issue across communities, there are often circumstances where people are investing in you an obligation to actually share the things that they're saying. They don't want to be consulted and have that voice not heard. So there's also that obligation to ensure that you're not a lip service researcher coming in to extract that perspective and those views about sometimes very deeply felt issues, and then have it just sit as a document on a shelf that goes nowhere, and some other end user can tick a box saying, well, we consulted, so which is another element, I guess, about respectful management of data. And, I guess that community may never seek to re-access the individual statements that people made about some weird and wonderful topic. But yeah, so the obligation isn't necessarily to make it accessible, although you need to make provision because you never know what people will want access to in the future. But yeah, to make sure that the underlying sentiment and message that people conveyed to you and you agreed to share makes it into that public space with the integrity and without misrepresentation. So with the integrity of its original voice and without any misrepresentation.
That's a really interesting point. Thank you. And we've come to our final question. What responsibilities do libraries, universities, and publishers have in supporting ethical, community-led knowledge sharing?
Oh, I think from a library perspective, it's huge. Like I wouldn't really see that we have much function at all unless it's holding the materials with integrity in a way that supports people's intentions, as Jackie was saying. Libraries are often the places where a lot of this information ends up months or years down the track. There are reports or books or photographs that are produced from the interaction of research in community, and they end up in the library often. And yeah, unless we can hold those materials in a way that respects the intentions of the knowledge producers, then I don't think we should be in the business.
Yeah, and that's for all groups within the community, you know, not just First Nations, it's everyone. So if we've got images and we need to identify people, oral histories, documents, you know, and because when people in the community come into the library, we had a group of Stolen Generation people come in the other day, and they were sort of gobsmacked with all the information we had on Stolen Generation. And yeah, so it's the next generations that'll come in and do their research, which is what we want. Not so much the original Stolen Generation, but it'll be from all members of our community in the Territory coming in and using the library and letting us know what's right and what's the right way to use the material.
And yet, university, we've got a lot of responsibility because of groups that go out and do research to bring those community in as researchers and to train them. Well, what's a research process? What's it involve? What do you need to do if you want to lead your own research? But also things like we're setting up more opportunity for research to be done in language, so that the repository of material in that language will be available for that community to continue to research. So it'll be a Yolngu or Warlpiri section of the university where you come and do your research in that language on your people's material, which I think will be so amazing. So I hope this grows, and this is a way that knowledge system can grow within its own space without outside influence or determination what's important. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Jackie, anything you'd like to add?
No, those responses from the others were spot on. Yeah. And I love it. I love that idea, Kat, of a space where people can come in and do their own research in their own language and access their own material.
All right.
So,
yes, sorry, Don.
I was going to say, sorry, what the library's doing, Library and Archives is doing. So, yeah.
Mm.
Okay. And thank you so much. That was a really, I mean, just within a tight time frame, but it's a very deep discussion, in depth. Thank you so much for all your wonderful insights. I'm going to hand back to Crystal now, who's going to open up for any questions from the participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and thank you to our wonderful panel members for sharing their insights and your information and knowledge with us today. I have been keeping an eye on the chat to see whether anything has been coming in, and just a lot of thank yous. There have been no questions that have been submitted, so if there's anyone online that would like to ask a question now, feel free to submit something into the chat and I will read it out for our panelists.
And I want to say, it was
sorry,
great to hear. So I just want to say it was great to hear what Libraries and Archives is doing. It's really interesting. So I've been down a few times, but not meet people. So yeah, it's great news.
And really interesting for us too. Yeah, getting a sense of CDU's work in these spaces. It's awesome.
And once again, thank you to all of our panelists for giving your time today, and thank you to all of you for coming.